lived with Grandma for a year after Dad's death but discovered she was actually his stepmom who forced his real mother into a mental institution and took her place in the family without anyone questioning what happened to the original Grandma. When Dad passed away, everything just sort of stopped. We did bury him on a rainy Thursday, and Sunday morning, Grandma pulled up in this navy blue sedan that was too clean for the state that we were in. She hugged me like she had known me, when really I barely remembered her face. I mean, we had gone there a couple of times when I was little, but she had never been around our everyday lives. But she said the right things, called me sweetheart, said I looked just like my dad when I was that age, said to Mom that she needed to rest and she'd be glad to have me for a while. I had no idea what a while meant when I was younger. I just knew Mom was hollow, like they had scooped out the middle of her, and all they had was the shell going around. So when Grandma told us, "He can live with me for school," and Mom didn't say anything, I didn't say anything either. I packed some clothes in a duffel bag, jammed my toothbrush in a side pocket, and we took off like that. Just us and this woman I barely knew who suddenly felt the need to be in charge of everything. Her house was big, too big for one person. One of those old brick houses with squeaky floors and dusty paintings on the wall down the hallway. She did have rules though, and they weren't logical. Like, I was never allowed to go down into the basement, ever. And the guest room on the second floor, the one with the door locked at the back of the hall, off limits. That's for storage, she'd say, even though I never did see her bring anything up or down. I was 12 years old, not a moron. I recognized that something was wrong, but I had just lost my father, so quite frankly, I didn't have the energy to care. I did what I was instructed, stayed out of the way, attempted to be the good little house guest despite the fact that I was really family. She cooked dinner every night, which was nice, but she'd stare as I ate, not in a sweet, spoiling kind of way, more like she was examining me for something. I didn't notice much at first. People strange their actions when they are grieving. Then there was the picture, a framed picture on the fireplace in the living room. It was an old one, sepia-toned, of Dad as a kid, maybe about my age, in front of a swing set. There was a woman next to him. I wanted to know if she were Grandma, and she replied yes, of course, but I don't know. There was something about what she was saying that didn't go on her face. I kept studying the photo when no one was looking, and the more I studied it, the more convinced I was it wasn't her. Not the same eyes, softer. The smile looked real. I even found myself one day saying under my breath, "That's not her," and at once feeling ridiculous for it. What am I to do with a thought such as that? Weeks passed. School started. I got along, made some friends, kept my head down. Sometimes I'd ask to call Mom, and Grandma'd hand me the phone but always lingered there as if she was watching over me. And Mom never said much, always sounded tired, fuzzy, like she was underwater. I'd ask to go home, and she'd say soon, baby, just a little while longer. Be good for Grandma, okay? I wanted to tell her something didn't feel right, but I had no idea how to say that without sounding crazy. And to be honest, maybe I was just paranoid. Maybe my head was just tricking me because I was missing my dad. And then I started to hear things at night. Not like ghosts or anything, just little soft voices. From upstairs, from the locked room. I tried listening at the door once, but it was too thick. I couldn't hear right. Just muffled sounds, like someone crying, or maybe humming. When I asked Grandma about it, she said I must have been dreaming. "House is this old creek," she said. "Don't let your imagination run wild." I wanted to believe her, but the way she looked at me when she said the words, not annoyed or upset, but afraid, that told me all I needed to know. There was something she was hiding. She left one Saturday, told me she'd be back in an hour. The second the front door slammed shut after her, I ran upstairs. Don't know why I did it. Maybe I thought I'd find something stupid, something like old equipment, or piles of clothes. But when I attempted to jingle the doorknob, it was still locked. And that was scarier. Who locks a storage room on the outside? I went back downstairs, tried the basement door. Locked too. The windows were tightly closed also, with thick curtains pulled over them. This was not an old lady's residence. It was a cage. That night, I crawled out of my bedroom after midnight. Tried to move quietly so the boards wouldn't squeak. I crawled to the hallway in which the locked room was. I wasn't going to do anything, just listen one more time. And this time, I heard something clear, a voice, a female voice, whimpering, then a word, "Please." I was frozen. It was so quiet, I thought I was dreaming. But then there was another whisper, "Help me." My whole body tensed. I didn't even breathe. And poof, the noise was gone. Total silence. Crept slowly away and collapsed into my room, heart pounding so loudly I was too scared to wake the whole house. The next morning, Grandma made pancakes, acted like nothing had happened. But when I looked at her hands, they were shaking, barely. Heard the syrup drip from her spoon and wondered if she could hear it too. Or maybe Maybe she actually knew exactly what I'd heard, and just didn't care. I started keeping things to myself after that night, not out of fear really, but because I'd learned something that scared me worse than the voice itself. I was completely alone here. I couldn't talk about this with Mom. She sounded hardly like herself anymore. Her phone calls became shorter, as though she were evaporating from my life word by word. And Grandma? Always watching. Even when she smiled or appeared to be like all other people, I sensed it. This tightness in the room. This feeling of being measured and weighed with every passing moment. I stopped asking questions. I ate what was placed on my plate. I went to school. I stayed out of the hallway at night. I tried to vanish. And it worked, at least for a little while. But I couldn't help but wonder about the voice. About how it said, "Help me," not "Hello" or "Is anyone there?" No, it was a cry for assistance. Like a person trapped. Like someone who'd been there forever. I started studying the photograph on the mantel again and again. Every day, comparing it to the lady who tucked me in every night. I even took a quick photo of it on my phone when she wasn't looking. Zoomed in, studied the face. Still didn't look like her. The longer I looked at it, the more I thought to myself, the woman in this photo was a whole different person. And then one day, I lingered after school, just to be around people. I found myself in the library, and I have no idea what I was expecting. But I plugged my grandma's name into the computer. Her whole name. The one she had given me when she first picked me up from the foster home. Nothing. So I entered my dad's name, just out of curiosity. There was a couple of old articles. He'd been the football coach, and there were some local ones years ago. And then I saw something odd. One of the older ones said his mother's name. It said he was the son of Judith Keller, not the name Grandma had provided me. Not even close. I recall I just stared at that name, Judith Keller, and I felt the chills, because I'd never heard of it. I clicked on the link, but the article had been archived. Just a line or two, too little to comment on anything. Still, it stuck. Who was Judith Keller, and why did Grandma mention her name as Barbara? I didn't know what to believe, but something opened up that day. A part of me that had been striving so hard to stay tiny, stay silent. It couldn't do it any longer. I must know what was happening, so I waited. 2 additional weeks passed. I started listening in the evenings, quietly, feigning sleep but keeping my ear tuned towards the hallway. The voice was back. Not on every single evening, but now and then, whispering, crying, stammering the same words over and over again. "Please, help me." I memorized the sound. I started to hear it when it wasn't even there. Then one weekend, Grandma got sick. Nothing awful, just a stomach ache or something. But she took some medicine and went to bed early. And that evening, for the first time since I got there, she forgot to lock up the second-floor hall. I found the key hooked to a hook by the back door. I don't know why I had never noticed it before. Maybe she had always worn it. Maybe she made an error. Whatever, I stood there staring at it for what seemed like forever. And then I took it. I sneaked up to the stairs. The corridor was darker than usual, as though the shadows were more concentrated. I held the key in my hand, palms sweaty, heart racing so wildly I feared it would give me away. I shoved it into the door, turned it, heard the click, and paused, motionless for a moment. Something within me was telling me, don't open it, just go away. But I couldn't do that. I opened the door farther. The stench hit me first, some sour, stale smell, like old paper and mold. The room was small, barely furnished. Just a mattress on the floor, some blankets, a wooden chair, and, God, a woman, sitting in the corner, facing the wall, thin, hair tangled and graying. She didn't even flinch when the door opened. She just whispered, "Is it morning?" Her voice. It was the same one I'd heard through the wall. Soft, fragile. I couldn't speak. I inched closer. She turned her head, and for a brief moment, I was seeing her face correctly. And I knew. I just knew. It was the lady in the picture. The one standing next to my dad when he was a kid. The real one. The one Grandma had said she was. My heart tightened. I felt like I was gazing at a ghost. Who are you?" I finally talked, and she smiled. Not with her mouth so much, but with her eyes. "You're Daniel's son," she said softly. "You have his hands." I dropped to my knees. "Are you Judith Keller?" I asked. She nodded, barely. "He was my son. Is he okay?" That's when it broke. I told her Dad was dead, that he'd died. Her whole body just sort of deflated, like they had let air out of her. "I always hoped he'd come," she said. "I thought he'd come look for me." I didn't know what to say. I didn't even know how to feel. My real grandma had been locked in this room, maybe for years. And the lady in the house below, who had feigned concern for me, the lady who made me pancakes and called me sweetie, she wasn't family. She wasn't even sane. She'd replaced someone, replaced my dad's mother from him. And we didn't know. None of us had any idea. I held Judith steady on her feet. She was weak, but she held on to me. I asked her how long she'd been there, and she said, "Since Daniel got married." I attempted to warn him. She did not want me around, informed me I was trespassing. Then one morning I woke up here, and told everyone I was sick, that I'd gone. Questioned her on why she never screamed, why she hadn't tried to escape, and she said she made me forget, gave me pills, undefined, told me lies. I lost all feeling for what was real. I grasped her hand and said, "You're no longer alone," but I didn't know what to do next. Undefined, how are you supposed to explain something like this? Undefined, who would even believe me? I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor next to Judith, or Grandma, my real grandma, and just watched her drift in and out like she'd been underwater for years and was only now learning to breathe again. Her speech was slow, sometimes jumbled, like her brain had to strain to connect things, but she recognized me. Not my name, not at first, but my face. She said I had the same expression Dad would get when he was trying to be brave. That affected me more than I thought it would. I wanted to cry, but I did not want to scare her. She was scared enough already. It was around 5 a.m. when I heard the creak on the floor below. The creak that I had grown used to in the past few months. That cautious, slow step that Grandma took while moving around the house. I froze. The room didn't have an inside lock. I'd kept the door open wide. I didn't know what to do. I just stood there, my heart racing, and looked at Judith. She spun around, her eyes wide. She whispered, "Don't let her take me again." Something in me just went, I don't know. I picked the key up from the floor and closed the door quietly, locked it. Then I ran to my bedroom, tossed the key under my mattress, and covered up with the blankets like I was 6 years old again, hiding from monsters. A few minutes later, I heard her outside my door. "Honey," she called. Her voice was breezy, too breezy. "Did you leave your window open last night? It's cold upstairs." I didn't answer. I just lay there with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling as though it would split open and crash down on me. After a while, she left. I waited 5 more minutes, then went back to Judith. She was in the same place, still frightened. I told her I was going to help her. Not maybe, not someday. Today. I told her I just needed to think. The bus came at 7:30. I got on it like normal, backpack over my shoulder, heart pounding like crazy. But I didn't go to school. I got off 2 stops later and walked straight to the police station. My legs shook the whole way. I was constantly rehearsing what I was going to say to them, but nothing sounded credible enough. Who would think a 12-year-old boy when he told them his grandmother locked another woman in the upstairs room for years and took her place in the family? But I didn't care anymore. I had to do it. I went to the front desk and told the officer I needed to talk to someone about my grandma. "Which grandma?" he asked, like I had an option. I just said, "The wrong one." They took me into a small room, made me sit down, brought me water. Then they asked questions, lots of them. I told them everything, from the doors that were locked to the different names to the woman upstairs screaming for help. I showed them the photo I had taken, then I showed them a selfie I had taken of the woman who raised me this past year. These are not the same person, I told them. I could see it in their eyes. They did not know what to make of it, yet they were listening. They brought me home a few hours later. 3 cops came to the door. One knocked while the others waited off to the side. Barbara answered it like nothing was wrong. "Oh my goodness," she said in her best fake concern. "What's wrong? Did something happen at school?" But her voice cracked. Just a little. She looked behind the officer and saw me standing there, and her smile faltered. Just for a second. "They asked to come in?" She hesitated. "That's all it took. They came in anyway." I followed them up the stairs behind them. My chest was full of a feeling of rocks. One of the officers asked where the locked room was. I indicated. Grandma stepped in front of it. "That's just storage," she said, all sweet and syrupy. But she didn't have a key. I did. I gave it to him. The officer opened the door, and there she was, Judith, sitting on the floor, blinking up into the hall light like she hadn't seen it in years. And maybe she hadn't. The officer knelt down beside her gently. "Ma'am, are you okay?" She didn't say anything, just looked at me, reached out her hand like she needed to make sure I was still real. They led her out slowly, wrapped her in a blanket. She was still clinging to my hand down the stairs. During it all, Barbara was standing in the kitchen, arms crossed, mouth clenched, trying to spin it. "She's hallucinating," she said. "She walked in off the street. That's not even who you think it is." But it was too late. One of the officers said they'd be taking her in for questioning. And that was it. She wasn't Grandma anymore. She was this stranger in our house impersonating her. They uncovered old medical records afterward. Prescriptions for sedatives in the name of Judith Keller. Signed by a doctor who, it turned out, was retired and had no idea his name had been used. Bogus scribbles on episodes, dementia, unmanageable behavior. But what really happened? Judith had been okay. She was just in the way. She had a feeling something was off about Barbara from the start. She tried to warn Dad, but he wouldn't listen. Or maybe he never had the chance. Maybe Barbara took care of that. The worst was still to come, telling Mom. When I finally did see her, she was different. Smaller, She'd been at some sort of wellness center, I suppose. Not a hospital, but some quiet place. Peaceful. I did ask her if she ever wondered what happened to Grandma, her mother-in-law. She just shook her head and said, I thought she didn't want to be around us. Barbara had told everyone she went to Florida, sent fake letters, even fake birthday cards when I was little. Judith was taken to a genuine hospital to be healed, but she wasn't there for long. As soon as they realized she wasn't insane, just traumatized, they released her into my mom's care. And I saw my real grandmother smile for real in my lifetime for the very first time. Not the pretend kind, a real smile. It was small and tired and full of hurt, but it was real. The house was empty at that time. I mean physically it was still standing. Same red bricks, same creaky floorboards, same dusty portraits. But it did not feel like anything anymore. Just air and silence and old ghosts. Judith did not want to go back there, not even to collect her things. She said she did not want one thing that had belonged to that woman. Let it rot, she whispered. So we let it rot. The police taped it off for evidence anyway, and Mom and I went back to our apartment, just the two of us, and Judith eventually as well. She moved in bit by bit. I think a part of her didn't want to feel like she was trying to replace something or move into someone else's space. But she did bring one thing with her, a small photo album. Tattered leather cover, broken edges, pages that smelled of time itself. There were images of Dad as a baby, graduating from high school, buying his first car. I hadn't seen most of them. Judith would sit with me in the evenings and flip through the album as if it was the one map she had left to find him again. We'd talk about it occasionally. The woman who committed suicide. But not that often. It was like walking on thin ice. When you continue talking about how close it was to cracking, you start hearing the cracking again. I'd still ask questions sometimes, like how no one suspected, how Barbara got away with it for so long. Judith would shake her head and say, people believe what's easiest. And when someone tells you not to ask questions, eventually, you stop asking. That stuck with me. I think about it a lot. Mom got better slowly. Whatever Barbara had done to her, emotionally, mentally, it had sunk deep. She told me later that Barbara would tell her things like, you're not mother material, and Daniel married you only because he felt sorry for you. Little cuts every day. And when Dad died, Mom just came apart. She said she couldn't feel her own mind anymore. She didn't know if she was getting what she deserved, the silence. I told her that wasn't true, that she was coming back now, and she was. Not all at once, but in little ways. She started cooking again, started humming when she was working in the kitchen. She started asking me if I was doing okay. And then Judith moved in, and it was like this missing puzzle piece finally clicked into place, awkward but whole. I started having dreams about Dad. Not nightmares, not anymore. Just dreams where he'd show up in the same coat he'd wear on Sundays, holding 2 coffees, sitting next to me on the porch. We wouldn't say much. He'd just gaze out at the street and say, you did good, buddy. And I'd wake up not crying, just still, like something heavy inside of me had finally been set down. We never did hear from Barbara again. Last I heard, she was being held for psychiatric evaluation, then charged with kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, identity fraud, a whole bunch of stuff I didn't fully understand at the time. But the reality was, I didn't want to understand her. I didn't want to make space for her in my mind anymore. She'd already taken enough. It was time to take that space back for the people who deserved it. Judith and I were friends. Closer than I ever thought I could be with someone who had once been a stranger. We'd walk around the neighborhood, and she'd point out birds, flowers, stuff I never had any interest in before. She taught me to make banana bread from scratch, the same type Dad would eat warm with butter. It was like he was at the table with us again every time I bit into it. Mom actually laughed one night, really laughed, after biting into a slice and saying, God, this takes me back. And it hit me then. Healing doesn't come in big, movie moments. It comes in pieces. Banana bread, old photographs, a walk around the block, a hug that lasts only 1 second too long. The first time someone speaks your name, and it doesn't feel heavy. The first time you feel safe in your own house. The first time you sleep an entire night, and don't wake up waiting for someone to be looming over you. I still get asked about that year every now and then, by friends, or teachers, or therapists. They say things like, that must have been traumatic, or, I can't believe you went through that. And yeah, it was traumatic. It was terrifying. But it also taught me something I don't think most people learn until they're a lot older. Evil doesn't always look like monsters. And sometimes it smiles at you and makes breakfast for you and calls you sweetheart. And love, real love, sometimes it comes late, battered, confused, and still healing, but it comes. That's the thing. One day, a few months afterward, Judith asked me to go visit Dad's grave. She hadn't been. Said she didn't want to see him till she was herself again. When we got there, she stood in front of his grave marker for a bit. Didn't say anything, just held my hand. Then she knelt down, touched the stone gently, and whispered, "I'm here now, Danny. I'm so sorry I was gone." I think she needed to say that more for herself than for him. But I think, if he was listening, he already forgave her. I think he always would've. We sat under a tree at the edge of the cemetery for a while afterward, shared a thermos of tea, talked about nothing in particular, just were. And in that moment, I wasn't a boy who'd lost his dad. I wasn't a victim or a survivor. I was just a grandson, sitting with his grandmother, sipping in the silence. And I realized something. Sometimes the ones who are meant to keep you safe don't. And sometimes the ones you never thought would rescue you, do, not with fanfare, but with honesty, with silence, with standing there. After everyone else gave up looking undefined, that summer altered everything. Undefined, but not all of it was devastation. Undefined, some of it, the good parts, was a start.